Hey everyone. Today's question of the week is one that I think every Christian should have some sort of answer in mind to. And here it is. Is God real? And if so, what's the evidence? 1 Peter instructs us to always be ready to give an answer for the hope that lies within. And part of that hope is knowing whether God is real. But before we get to that answer, I want to rephrase this question a little to clarify what I think we're trying to get to. We often talk about or are challenged on providing evidence for God. But what we really need is an argument for the existence of God, based on good evidence. So just to clarify, evidences, they're pieces of information. It's data points that by themselves they don't do any work. In order to use them, we need an argument that strings these pieces of information together in a coherent and persuasive argument. If you've watched any crime shows like CSI or Law & Order, you see evidence being collected by detectives and presented in front of the jury. A shoe print left at a crime scene or a grainy screenshot from a security camera. By themselves, these pieces of information don't really make a case. They don't do any work. But if the detective can link the shoe print with the suspect and enhance that screenshot big enough to show the tattoo on the back of his neck, well, then he might make an argument that the bad guy was in fact at the scene of the crime. So in order to answer this important question, well, we really need to respond with a good argument for the reality of God, and based on solid evidence. And that evidence might come from science or history or archaeology or philosophy or eyewitness accounts or logic or whatever, depending on what the argument is. So what are the arguments for the reality of God? Well, the main argument that I would use is that God is the best explanation of the way things really are. Let me show you how. The most basic thing about reality is that it exists. You and I are here. The world around us is here. The universe really does exist, and we need to know why. In my first video, I explored this argument, showing that God is the best explanation for why there is something rather than nothing. This is known as the argument from contingency and includes evidence from science and philosophy. But we can take this down a path one step further by asking how the universe got here in the first place. Many pieces of scientific evidence tell us that the universe had a beginning a long time ago. And if it had a beginning, then it needs a cause. So what could have caused that beginning? This is what scientists refer to as the Big Bang. Well, a Big Bang needs a Big Banger. And the properties of that banger is something that is really powerful and smart and is not made from the same stuff that the universe is made of. And this ends up pointing us to something like God as the best explanation for the cause of the universe. This is known as the cosmological argument and includes evidence from science and philosophy. But not only does the mere existence of the universe need an explanation, but so does its order and complexity. The universe seems to be finely tuned for the purpose of supporting complex life. There are dozens of constants and quantities which make up the universe. Things like the force of gravity or the speed of light or the mass of electrons and protons. And each of these are known to a very high degree of precision. And if any of these are off just the tiniest bit, we wouldn't be here. In fact, intelligent life could not have existed at all. This incredible fact is not controversial among scientists, but they differ on what the best explanation is for this fine-tuning. They've come up with three possible options. It's either by chance and we just got lucky, it's by necessity and it has to be this way, or it's by design. Well, as it turns out, the design answer is the one that's best supported by the evidence. And if it's designed, well, then we need a designer. And again, that points us towards God. This is known as the fine-tuning argument. And finally, we know something else about this universe that needs an explanation, and that is that there's something wrong with it. It's broken. It's not supposed to be this way. You turn on the news or pull up a website and you can find endless examples of bad things in the world. And I'm not talking about subjectively bad things that I don't like or I find awful, like pineapple on pizza. I'm talking about real, objective evil. Murder, rape, child trafficking, genocide. This is the evil that needs to be explained. Atheists use this fact in an attempt to argue against God, as in, if God were real, then there wouldn't be so much evil in the world. This is called the problem of evil. But if there is no God, there can be no evil, at least not in the objective sense. Without God, there is no moral lawgiver. If there's no lawgiver, then there's no moral laws against things like murder and genocide. If there's no moral laws, then there's no broken laws and no problem of evil. Simply put then, if there is no God, there can be no evil. But there is evil. Therefore, there is a God. This is known as the moral argument, and is supported by philosophy and logic, history, and our own intuitions about the way things ought to be. There are many other arguments I could give you for God's existence. The complexity of biological life, or the existence of consciousness in the soul. These are great arguments for the reliability of the Bible, and especially the life and the death and resurrection of Jesus. And if you want more information on any of these topics, drop a note in the box and I'll get to them in a couple weeks. Now, I will admit that some of these arguments may not resonate with you or someone that you're talking to, but taken together, they build a very powerful argument for the existence of God and why He is the best explanation for the way things really are. Mr. Perry out.